The human brain. The universe's most powerful machine? Secrets science still can't explain. The human brain, the 1.4 kilograms machine that questions itself, is the only thing in the universe known to question its own existence. It has sent humans to Mars, composed soul-stirring symphonies, yet also created faceless killers. What gives this small mass of gray matter the capacity to hold both heaven and hell? From ancient Greece, where Aristotle believed the heart was the source of consciousness, to the age of AI and the dream of uploading minds to the cloud, the brain remains the greatest enigma, defying all logic and outpacing every form of technology. Exploring it is like hunting for treasure within our own bodies. Every discovery opens a door, only to reveal a new labyrinth beyond. Let us step into a world of neurons that spark like stars, where a fall can turn an ordinary person into a genius, and a charming smile may conceal a devil's face. The human brain. A complex wonder with infinite potential. The human brain has long been regarded as a natural marvel, surpassing even the most advanced electronic machines ever created. Composed of billions of intricately interconnected neurons, the brain is not only the command center of all life functions but also possesses extraordinary information processing capabilities. Compared to a supercomputer, the brain consumes thousands of times less energy, yet can accomplish tasks far beyond the reach of current technology. This becomes most evident through the power of imagination, a remarkable ability that allows humans to transcend the limitations of the senses and conceive abstract ideas, create art, or even envision the future. When a scientist formulates a theory of the cosmos, an artist sketches a painting that has never existed, or a child dreams of a fairy tale world, they are tapping into the brain's limitless power, something no algorithm can fully replicate. And yet, what makes the brain even more mysterious is its untapped potential. Studies suggest that humans only utilize a fraction of their brain's actual capacity. For instance, infants can distinguish over 800 phonetic sounds, but as they grow older, most retain only around 40 familiar ones. This indicates the brain's ability to adapt and self-limit over time, a survival mechanism to focus on essential skills. But is this a trade-off between potential and efficiency? Scientists continue to debate whether we can unlock the brain's full power without damaging the nervous system. The paradox becomes even starker when we place our limited understanding of the brain beside humanity's greatest achievements. We've sent spacecraft to Mars, decoded the human genome, and created artificial intelligence, yet the very brain that enabled these milestones remains our greatest mystery. We know more about black holes than about how a single thought is formed. We map distant galaxies, but still cannot fully explain how memories are stored. This raises a fundamental question. Is there a limit to how much we can understand ourselves? The brain, a scientific and philosophical mystery. The mysteries of the brain not only drive scientific progress but also spark profound philosophical questions about the nature of consciousness. When we look into the mirror and recognize ourselves as thinking beings, we are confronted with a paradox. Why do we exist with this awareness? The brain, responsible for creating consciousness, cannot fully explain the origin of that consciousness. This is the blurry boundary between biology and philosophy, between matter and spirit. While quantum physics and astronomy gradually unveil the laws of the universe, the brain remains an uncharted wilderness filled with unsolved riddles, a living reminder that the miracle of life lies within every gray cell. The infant brain, a mysterious miniature supercomputer. When a baby is born, its first cries not only mark the beginning of life but also offer a glimpse into a miraculous brain, the most powerful information processing machine on the planet. Research from the University of Washington, USA, has shown that newborns possess extraordinary learning capabilities. They can perceive and distinguish over 800 different communication sounds from around the world, ranging from the complex tones of Cantonese to the distinct trills of indigenous African languages. This reveals that a child's brain is not a blank slate, but more like a pre-programmed supercomputer, primed to adapt to any culture. However, this remarkable ability gradually narrows over time. By adulthood, most of us retain only about 40 familiar sounds from our native language. This loss doesn't stem from brain degeneration, but rather from a process of natural optimization. much like a garden that must be pruned to nurture its strongest branches. The infant brain gradually trims away unnecessary neural connections, preserving those most useful for its environment. This phenomenon, known as synaptic pruning, explains why children learn new languages so easily. While adults struggle, it is both a brilliant survival mechanism and a powerful reminder of the trade-off between flexibility and efficiency. The physical structure of the infant brain also holds astonishing secrets. Though it weighs only about 370 to 390 grams, roughly 12 to 13% of body weight, the newborn brain consumes up to 60% of the body's total energy, double the rate in adults, 2.3 to 2.8%. This energy, greed, reflects the brain's intense activity during early development. Every second, millions of new neural connections are formed, creating a network twice as dense as that of an adult brain. Neuroscientist Patricia Kuhl once described the infant brain as a sponge that soaks up culture, not only listening, but statistically analyzing sound patterns, detecting intonations, and gradually constructing its own language system. This entire process occurs unconsciously, as if children were pre-programmed to be natural-born linguists. Remarkably, the way infants learn to speak reveals the brain's intricate design. When a baby babbles, mama, or baba, these aren't random sounds. The child is experimenting, adjusting facial muscles, throat, and tongue to mimic exactly what they've heard. Each repetition strengthens neural pathways, turning sounds into learned skills. This explains why children in multilingual environments can distinguish between multiple languages without confusion, a capacity most adults lose after puberty. These discoveries not only shed light on the brain's potential during infancy but also raise critical questions for education. Are we wasting this golden window to maximize children's capabilities? Once we understand that the infant brain is the most powerful learning machine nature has given us, creating an environment rich in language, music, and social interaction during early childhood becomes not just beneficial, but essential. It may be the key to unlocking the extraordinary potential bestowed on every child at birth. Phineas Gage and the mystery of the brain's resilience. The horrific accident of Phineas Gage in 1848 was not only a miraculous survival story but also a turning point in the history of neuroscience, revealing profound mysteries about the brain's adaptability. When a 1-meter-long, 6-kilogram iron rod pierced through Gage's skull, from his left cheek up through the top of his head, doctors of the time were convinced he wouldn't survive. Yet, just minutes after losing consciousness, Gage woke up, able to speak and walk with astonishing clarity. His survival became a medical paradox. How could someone who had lost a significant portion of the left frontal lobe, the region responsible for emotion, planning, and decision-making, remain alive and even retain basic functionality? The answer lies in the brain's remarkable ability to reorganize itself. Despite the severe damage, Gage's remaining brain regions compensated by forming new connections, a phenomenon later known as neuroplasticity. However, the cost of survival was a permanent change in personality. From a calm, responsible man, Gage became impulsive, rude, and impatient. Dr. Edward Williams, the physician who treated him, remarked that Gage was no longer himself. A powerful illustration of the frontal lobe's central role in shaping personality and morality. Gage's case shattered 19th-century beliefs about the brain. At the time, scientists thought mental functions were evenly distributed throughout the brain and that brain damage inevitably led to death or lifelong disability. But Gage proved that the brain does not operate as a uniform whole. Each region specializes in specific functions, and damage in one area can, to some extent, be compensated by others. This insight laid the foundation for the theory of functional localization in the brain, a cornerstone of modern neurosurgery and psychology. Beyond its scientific implications, Gage's story opened philosophical questions about the boundary between biology and personality. When part of the brain, the physical substrate, is destroyed, the former self seems to vanish, replaced by a new version with altered behaviors. This raises a profound question. Do consciousness and personality exist independently of the brain? Or are they merely products of chemical and physical interactions? While modern science has established a connection between the frontal lobe and social behavior, the precise mechanism by which the brain, creates personality remains unsolved. Gage's legacy didn't end in the 19th century. In the 1990s, researchers used MRI technology to reconstruct his injury, confirming that the iron rod had destroyed much of his prefrontal cortex, the brain region responsible for impulse control and assessing consequences. This explained Gage's newfound impatience and impaired decision-making. His case continues to inform modern medicine, improving our understanding of brain-injured patients and aiding the development of rehabilitation therapies grounded in neuroplasticity. Phineas Gage's story is a lasting reminder that the brain is not just the organ of survival. It is the architect of human identity. Its fragility and resilience show us that no matter how advanced technology becomes, the mystery of how gray matter gives rise to consciousness remains one of the greatest challenges in 21st-century science. Derek Amato and the mystery of Savant syndrome, when trauma unlocks genius. Derek Amato's story is perhaps the strangest testament to the mysterious power of the human brain. A case where a life-altering accident turned an ordinary man into a musical genius. In 2006, at age 39, Amato suffered a traumatic brain injury when he dove headfirst into a shallow pool. The severe impact knocked him unconscious, caused a concussion, led to 35% hearing loss, and impaired his memory. What seemed to be the end of a life once marked by odd jobs and uncertainty instead became a pivotal moment that rewrote his fate. After regaining consciousness and visiting a friend's house, Amato was inexplicably drawn to a piano, a musical instrument he had never touched before, and began to play complex melodies fluently. Even more astonishing, he described seeing musical notes flowing in his mind like visual streams. An experience he likened to decoding a universal language. This phenomenon is not a miracle, but rather a manifestation of Savant syndrome, a rare condition in which brain trauma or neurological disorders trigger extraordinary abilities in individuals with no prior training. Amato's case has been interpreted by neuroscientists through the theory of hemispheric disinhibition. The trauma may have impaired his brain's left hemisphere, responsible for logic and language, thereby unleashing the vast creative potential of the right hemisphere, associated with art and spatial awareness. This neural reorganization allowed his brain to devote resources to processing sound and musical imagery, transforming abstract melodies into an instinctive language. This theory aligns with studies on other well-known savants, such as Kim Peek, the inspiration for the film Rain Man, who, despite being unable to tie his shoes, could read and retain the contents of 12,000 books in astonishing detail. However, the most profound question raised by Amato's case is this: does each of us harbor dormant genius, waiting to be unlocked? Scientists at Harvard University have shown that the human brain contains about 86 billion neurons and 100 trillion synaptic connections, an intricate system capable of encoding a virtually limitless range of skills. Yet most of us utilize only a fraction of this network, due to the brain's tendency toward efficiency and self-regulation. A trauma like Amato's may break down these inhibitions, but at the cost of permanent damage. This presents a medical challenge. How can we unlock the brain's full potential without causing harm? Some experimental research has explored transcranial magnetic stimulation, TMS, to temporarily suppress specific brain regions, enhancing abilities like mathematics or drawing in ordinary individuals. However, such effects only last a few hours and carry unpredictable risks. Derek Amato's story also challenges the idea of innate genius. His musical talent wasn't the result of genetics or training but rather the product of a sudden neurological disruption. This supports a provocative hypothesis. Could every person carry an inner savant, suppressed by natural inhibitory mechanisms? If so, finding safe ways to turn off these controls could usher in a new era of education and cognitive development. Yet it also introduces a moral paradox. Are we willing to trade psychological stability for genius? Amato's case is not merely about rebirth after tragedy. It serves as a reminder that the brain still harbors countless secret doors left unopened. As science works to unlock those doors, the boundary between disability and brilliance, between injury and enlightenment, remains a compelling and humbling frontier. Ted Bundy and the mystery of the criminal brain, biology or environment. Ted Bundy, The infamous serial killer with a charming smile and razor-sharp intellect is a chilling example of the devil wearing the mask of a man. His brutal crimes not only horrified the public but also raised a deeply unsettling question: what turns an ordinary person into a monster? The answer may lie in a deadly interplay between brain abnormalities and a toxic environment. Research by Professor Adrian Raine, University of Pennsylvania, into the brains of criminals reveals that serial killers like Bundy often exhibit 10 to 15% lower activity in the prefrontal cortex compared to average individuals. This brain region governs impulse control, planning, and empathy, functions Bundy seemed to lack entirely. Analyzing PET scans and MRIs of violent offenders, neuroscientists have observed reduced blood flow to the orbitofrontal cortex, the area responsible for evaluating consequences and feeling guilt. In Bundy's case, this impairment may have been congenital or the result of early childhood trauma. But it created a moral void in his perception of right and wrong. However, contrary to the idea that evil is born, not made, studies show that brain defects are only one piece of a complex puzzle. Bundy's upbringing was steeped in violence. The grandfather who raised him during his early years was a racist, physically abusive man who tormented animals and beat his wife. Such cruelty may have nurtured the sick seeds lurking in Bundy's neural wiring. His case has reignited debate over legal responsibility in individuals with abnormal brains. Do they possess enough free will to choose between good and evil? Or are their actions inevitable outcomes of biology? In 1992, the trial of serial killer Richard Ramirez made headlines when defense attorneys argued that trauma-induced damage to his temporal lobe had compromised his self-control. Although it didn't spare Ramirez from the death penalty, the case opened the door to using brain imaging as mitigating evidence in court. This development places science in an ethical dilemma. If the brain determines behavior, should society punish or treat criminals? Yet these insights also offer hope for early intervention. Developmental psychologists like Terry Moffat, Duke University, have shown that children with a variant of the MAOA gene, nicknamed the warrior gene, who also experience childhood abuse are 12 times more likely to become violent offenders. If these biological and environmental red flags can be detected early, society might prevent future crimes through behavioral therapy, emotional education, or even neurological interventions. However, labeling children as having a criminal brain raises serious concerns about stigma and privacy rights. Ultimately, Ted Bundy's story is a grim reminder of how fragile human morality can be. The brain, though the most sophisticated machine ever known, can become a vessel for horror in the absence of compassion and guidance. Science may offer clues to the how of such evil, but the gray area between victim of biology and perpetrator by choice remains fiercely debated. As we search for answers, perhaps we must also remember, while the brain may shape us, it is our choices that define who we become. Project Stargate and clairvoyance. When the CIA believed in the brain's supernatural power. During the Cold War, when satellite and computer technology were limited, the CIA and U.S. military funneled tens of millions of dollars into a classified program called Stargate, 1970 to 1995. Aiming to harness human psychic abilities for intelligence purposes. This was not science fiction but a serious research initiative based on the hypothesis that the brain could access information beyond space and time through remote viewing. Special operatives like Joseph McMoneagle, dubbed Psychic Spy No. 1, accurately described Soviet nuclear facilities and even saw Scud missiles hidden in the Iraqi desert simply by sitting in dark rooms and focusing on geographic coordinates. One of Stargate's notable successes was locating a crashed Soviet Tu-95 bomber in Africa in 1976. When satellite and ground reconnaissance failed, Stargate's psychics drew shockingly precise maps of the jungle, enabling rescue teams to find the wreckage within days. The case of Angela Thomas Smith further validated this potential, using clairvoyance. She guided police to the body of Stephen B. Williams, a missing TV host in 2006. Despite never visiting the scene, Smith described seeing rushing water and feeling the victim's pain, clues later corroborated by forensic evidence. The science and skepticism behind the sixth sense. The mechanism of clairvoyance remains a mystery. Scientists at Stanford Research Institute, SRI, collaborating with the CIA, proposed a global information field, where the brain accesses an invisible data repository through altered consciousness. In controlled experiments, Stargate operatives achieved 35 to 65% accuracy in describing random targets, far exceeding the 1/10,000 odds of random guessing. Yet skeptics like Ray Hyman, University of Oregon, dismissed this as self-deception, the brain retroactively fitting vague information into coherent narratives after knowing outcomes. Stargate was shut down in 1995 due to lack of conclusive evidence and budget cuts. But its legacy remains controversial. On one hand, it exposed intelligence agencies' desperation in the tech race. On the other, it hinted that the human brain harbors abilities beyond modern science's grasp. Today, clairvoyance research continues through neuroscience, exploring how meditation or brain stimulation might expand consciousness. Despite skepticism, Stargate raised profound questions. Does consciousness exist independently of matter? Is the brain a gateway to other dimensions? The tale of psychic spies is not just a bizarre chapter in intelligence history but a reminder that the brain's potential remains a mysterious frontier, where science and the supernatural blur. In this quest, perhaps we must humbly admit, the brain's limits lie not in itself but in our biases about what is possible. Mind uploading. Immortality dream or ethical nightmare? The idea of detaching consciousness from the biological body and uploading it to a computer, once sci-fi, is now a serious pursuit for tech firms and neuroscientists. Whole brain emulation, WBE, which aims to create digital copies of consciousness, promises immortality. Startups like Nectomy shocked the world by claiming they could preserve human brains in chemicals, awaiting future tech to scan and recreate them digitally. This vision hinges on a hypothesis. If we replicate all 86 billion neurons and 100 trillion connections, the connectome, consciousness could be transferred intact into a virtual realm. Technical hurdles and philosophical paradoxes. The challenges are monumental. Current brain scanning technology requires slicing tissue into 30 nanometer layers and imaging each with electron microscopes. This succeeded with a roundworm's brain, 302 neurons, in 1986. But for humans, it demands processing 1 zettabyte, 10 to the power of 21 bytes, equivalent to the entire 2016 Internet. Even the world's fastest supercomputer, the US's Frontier, only reaches 1 exaflop, 10 to the power of 18 operations per second. While simulating a human brain requires at least 1 zettaflop, 10 to the power of 21. Ironically, the brain operates on 20 watts, while its emulator would need millions, a colossal energy barrier. Philosophically, questions about consciousness persist. If we perfectly copy John's brain into a computer, is the digital John truly him or just an AI mirroring his memories? The ship of Theseus paradox applies here. If each neuron is replaced with silicon, when does John cease to be himself? Physicist Roger Penrose argues consciousness involves quantum effects beyond algorithmic simulation, while futurist Ray Kurzweil predicts human-machine fusion by 2045. Erasing biology-digital divides. Ethical and societal perils. The societal risks are alarming. Wealthy, immortals, versus mortal poor could trigger moral stratification. If consciousness lives in the cloud, who owns it? Could hackers manipulate digital souls? Neuralink's 2023 data breach proved this threat is real. Yet WBE's allure persists. In 2022, Cambridge University launched the Blue Brain Project, using supercomputers to simulate a mouse's cortex. Though replicating just 0.1% of a human brain, it offers insights into Alzheimer's and epilepsy. Ethicists like Anders Sandberg, Oxford, urge international regulations before tech spirals out of control. Once this Pandora's box opens, humanity will face unprecedented questions. Do digital minds have human rights? Can we ethically copy or delete them? The quest to upload consciousness mirrors Prometheus stealing fire, ambitious yet perilous. While transhumanists see it as a key to transcending biology, others fear losing humanity to become immortal glitches. As we advance, we must ask, in chasing eternal life, Might we lose our very essence? The future of brain research. Between hope and eternal enigmas. Over 2 centuries after Phineas Gage's accident, humanity still grapples with an age-old question. Can we ever truly understand our own brains? Despite monumental advances, from decoding neuroplasticity to mapping brain genes, science remains like a sailor facing an endless ocean, where every discovery reveals thousands of new mysteries. The brain, with its 86 billion neurons and hundreds of trillions of connections, is not only the most complex known matter in the universe but also a mirror reflecting human intellect's paradox. The more we learn, the smaller we realize we are. 21st century breakthroughs and persistent gaps. The most significant achievement of this century lies in brain imaging technology. fMRI and optogenetics allow real-time observation of brain activity, while AI analyzes links between neural networks and behavior. The EU's Human Brain Project has partially simulated the human brain, aiding epilepsy and schizophrenia research. Yet, even if we replicate every cell, science still cannot explain why neuron clusters generate love or how consciousness arises from inert matter. Neuroscientist Christoph Koch once admitted, "We know how the brain processes red, but not why you perceive it as red, rather than a binary code." AI, ally or adversary? In this journey, artificial intelligence, AI, is both a partner and a rival. Deep neural networks mimicking the brain have defeated Go champions and diagnosed cancer more accurately than doctors. Yet AI also exposes a fundamental divide between biological and machine intelligence. AlphaGo calculates 10.000 moves per second but feels no joy in victory. This raises a hypothesis. Is consciousness a biological privilege, or just an uncoded complex algorithm? Mounting ethical dilemmas. Ethical challenges loom large. Interventions like CRISPR gene editing, Neuralink implants, or deep brain stimulation, DBS, blur lines between therapy and human enhancement. Should parents edit genes to boost their child's intelligence? If AI reads thoughts via brainwaves, what becomes of privacy? A 2023 incident where hackers hijacked a Parkinson's patient's DBS system sounded alarms about biosecurity. Toward an interdisciplinary future. Facing these frontiers, scientists advocate interdisciplinary approaches merging biology, philosophy, and art. The U.S. Brain Initiative, funded with $6 billion, supports not just labs but studies on consciousness in meditation and near-death experiences. Artist Annika Yi even created installations using bacteria to mimic non-human intelligence. Challenging definitions of thought. The eternal quest. Exploring the brain is like disassembling a mechanical watch blindfolded. We can describe each part, but the mystery of how they combine to create the self remains. As physicist Richard Feynman said, the brain is like the universe, marvelous not because it holds all answers, but because it teaches us to ask questions. No matter the future's technology, humility in the face of our own enigmas is what truly makes us brain-equipped. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments below. For now, goodbye. See you in the next video.